All right, so today I'm going to tell you about the Center for Instructional Mentoring and the many different things that we do. There's 6 main categories of things that we're doing. Our biggest role is that we do all the instructional mentoring, so we help with the teaching support. That includes teaching orientation, that includes first and second year GTA and ULA professional development while they're teaching, and that includes teaching assignments. So we do all of those things. I'll tell you a little bit more about a couple of those later. What else do we do? We also coordinate the MLC. So we coordinate all of the MLC tutor training, and we are working on developing a workshop series to the MLC to restructure things a little bit so that it's not the drop-in individualized tutoring, that is still going to be a component of what we do, but we'll also have more centralized planned workshop interventions based on content. So for example, we piloted that with Calc 2 this semester. So we had days that were like, oh, this is a trig substitution workshop through the MLC, and that seemed to be really productive, both in terms of saving and optimizing the efficiency of what people are able to do with helping students, and to pivot towards more learning goal centered tutoring versus finish my web work type of tutoring. What else do? We also do teaching evaluation, observation, and feedback. So we coordinate all of the sorts of evaluation, both formative and evaluative, for the TAs to catch any problems that are happening in the classroom. We have just developed an instrument to do that in the first and the second week of every semester formatively, so that we can catch teaching issues early before we're able to get into classrooms, so we can prioritize the observation list a little bit better. We've also helped to make the transition from in-person paper and pencil SIRS to electronic SIRS, which will help us do a quicker turnaround for teaching assignments and that sort of thing. Instead of getting your SIRS back in the second week, now we're going to get them back 1 week after they're done. So there was a big problem in between fall and spring. We really had no way to know how the SIRS would reflect. With our main issue is our ULA assignments and reappointment, because we are not doing very much professional development with the ULAs.
What's ULA again?
ULA are undergraduate learning assistants, so they'll be recitation leaders for a lot of the uniform courses. We also do some networking. So with the networking, one of the big projects that I've done this semester is I have helped to establish an alternative pathway to earn the certification in college teaching. The certification in college teaching is a certification offered through the graduate school, where TAs can do some focused development, and then this actually shows up on their transcript. The 4 components of that are coursework and discipline-based learning, and another one is a mentor teaching experience, which is they will essentially develop a unit plan or a lesson plan and do some assessment of their learning. Another one is a set of workshops that have to do with competencies, including like teaching to non-traditional learners, using technology in the classroom, knowing your institutional context, that sort of thing. And the last one is to put together a teaching portfolio. The thing that I've opened up is that coursework. Currently, the math coursework is Math Ed 879, which is a super logistical nightmare for math grad students because it's offered in fall of even years during times that they can't typically take classes. So what we've done is Rick Campa offers a MOOC called Evidence-Based STEM Teaching Practices every fall and spring so far since they got that grant to do that. That will not count to replace 879, but it'll be one of the things that replaces it, because that's just STEM teaching in general. The thing that I've added in is this summer I'm running my first pilot of a summer 1-credit reading course specifically related to undergraduate math ed teaching. And we're not reading the same sort of stuff like we did in 879. It's basically we're going through the specific MAA recommendation documents. So like the calculus recommendations, the recommendations, the CUPM undergraduate recommendations, so recommendations for things like abstract algebra and that sort of stuff that isn't talked about as much in 879. And so those two together will fulfill that coursework so that more people can hopefully get the certification in college teaching, because doing things like the teaching portfolio and stuff I think is really going to help. Our last certification in college teaching graduate was that would have been 2013, and before that it was Alex Theakston several years ago. So there's not very many people coming through math getting this, so we really hope to do that.
Can I just pause for a minute and ask that quick? So how many hours does it take to get that certification?
I think Adam did his over 2 years. I think if you did it in one semester, it would probably be like a 5-hour-a-week commitment.
Yeah, but I actually review, so they have a faculty review of the portfolios before you can get your certificate. And I review them in the graduate college like pays me a small stipend to do it, but all I see are the like College of Ed ones.
Mhm.
So I'm probably not what they consider to be a appropriate reviewer for anything coming from CNS. But when I reviewed them, I mean, they have to take a lot of professional development, write reflection papers on it. They have to do like kind of a, scholarship of teaching project in a way. So that was a part, at least portfolio that I reviewed.
And the program is structured so that it does not have to be completed. That you won't earn the certificate, but if you do any individual component, they'll be useful on their own. So putting together your teaching portfolio, doing the mentor teaching experience, it's structured so that each one of those things is its own.
It is something that you don't want to do in one semester. It would seem like it would be something.
No. I think the 2-year track is the way to do it, which is why this alternative pathway is really nice because so this summer, we have a second and a third year grad student who are just taking the reading class this summer. They're planning to take the MOOC next fall, and then maybe next spring they'll do their mentor teaching experience, and then they have a TA institute on a one day where you do all of the workshops and whatever in one day. So it is nice to spread it out, and if you spread it out, it can be not a lot of work over a long period. So we're trying to integrate that into our mentoring program so that it'll just roll right into that, and so we can turn out some more, because there's a huge job finding problem with people coming out of math. So if we can get the teaching and research to go together without having the teaching take over the grad program, which I think is very easy to do, we can have a lot better success. Some other things that we're doing with the networking, we're in the networking version here. I'm trying to visualize my presentation. We also have integrated with the Hub a little bit. I don't know if you've heard about what they're doing, but we're working with them to do some bigger assessment of student learning, including like trying to work with them because they now have these personality profiles on all incoming freshmen. So you have like persistence and leadership quality data on every student. So if we're talking about putting groups together in Math 124 for groups, we can maybe do that a little bit more intelligently, so you could say, let's make sure we have at least one persister in every group or whatever. So we're working on that a little bit, along with some of the stuff for Math 101, 102, where we're helping do we helped develop some formative surveys to give to the Math 101, 102 students to find out how their experience was going. Yep, that's the QL courses, yep. What else was on there? I guess I'll just continue with I'll start with the TA professional development track, and if I have any other questions or whatever, I'll go back to that. So we have revamped orientation, and there's some other stuff on these slides. What I wanted to show is just the new PhD track and what they would go through. So what the new PhDs do is they don't participate in the first year fall teaching orientation. They just participate in the general grad orientation. And then part of that orientation will be it'll be a session on what the professional development track is, because they're not going to be teaching until the summer after their first year maybe, but they're not going to get their full teaching assignments till the second year fall. So we didn't want to do a teaching orientation a year ahead of time and have it sort of dissipate over the year. So,
have given that year off. How many graduate students come in?
This year we have 18. Last year we had 0 or 3.
Really?
It depends. They had the same prime gap. It corresponded, so we have a huge shortage of teachers.
Yeah, that's down quite a bit.
We wondered if it was related to the CMP thing. I don't know. We have wondered. I don't know where there was some funding gap that happened in both programs similarly. Anyways, what the first year PhD students will do now is they don't teach in their first year. They just have 4 MLC shifts. And what they're going to do, we just had them do this spring. The next batch will be doing this in the fall. This spring they did observations of 103, 124, 132, and 133, which is college algebra, survey of Calc 1, Calc 1, Calc 2. They observed 2 of each of those classes because most of them have 2 structures. So they observed a large lecture of 103 and then a recitation of 103. And then in between each one of those units, we had a 103 discussion day, a 124 discussion day, and 132 and 133 discussion day. That was a really great seed for discussions because then they could ask questions about teaching even though they weren't teaching at MSU. That's been really great. They have to do this, yep. And the key here is that it's less than 1 hour per week total, because at the end of the fall they're trying to pass their quals. So there's a big push to have very little teaching responsibilities during that first fall. Now what would you do during the spring then? We're going to pair these first years with a mentor, either a faculty or a lead TA, not any faculty or lead TA, people who are good at teaching in the way that we want to teach. They will work with that faculty or lead TA to observe that specific class a couple of times throughout the semester and then teach 2 or 3 of those classes to get that in the classroom in front of a group of people jitters out before they're teaching in the summer. We're always leaning towards their first teaching is going to be in the summer. We'll talk about those challenges in a second. In this spring of their first year too, they're also going to participate in the SIM seminar series, where that will be their more structured professional development throughout the spring. They'll do micro teaching experiences, some videoed, where we'll be doing some sort of mock teaching with the group. And then there's also the other topics is the seminars that are currently existing seminar series, which is more ed philosophy-y, a lot applied, but more general education. Professional development, such as leading effective office hours, establishing a learning environment in your classroom, supporting students' success. So that one's really important, like the sorts of strategies that you need to do to detect in your grade book and stuff that students are struggling, and how to reach out to students, how to reach out to the different neighborhood center support groups to help your students pass in that way. That's something that we're not doing a very good job of, but that we hope to address through this sort of professional development. Teaching to fail, which is helping the TAs learn about, there's a failure is a big part of learning mathematics, that sort of thing, like iterative chances, and that it shouldn't be a one-shot assessment, that sort of thing. And then, of course, questioning techniques, how to ask effective questions in the classroom. So this would be their second year. We're trying to establish them as really as an educator. And then our big challenge. So with this restructured graduate program, their first teaching assignment is in the summer. Some are 7-week classes instead of 15-week classes. They're almost entirely autonomous. So that's a big challenge because we need instructors who are essentially experienced, but these are people who have never taught before. So we went. This starts this summer. May 13th is our first orientation.
But this summer you don't have any new.
This summer we have our first years are teaching this summer.
And how many of those do you have?
14. This year's first year graduate students will teach in the summer for their first time.
Okay, so you had 14 new ones this past
We had
year.
18, 14 are teaching, yeah. So they're only teaching 103, 124, 132, and 133. They're actually not doing 132 this summer because we tried to collapse them into as few classes as possible, so we can provide very, very individualized support. We're doing a one-day orientation. It's only one day because they have quals. Their qualifying exams are up until Wednesday. Then we have a one-day orientation on Friday, and then they are going to teach on Monday. These orientation topics would have been the topics that were covered in the fall for the people who weren't first-year PhDs, so like the master's students or the ULA. So we're going to go over FERPA and lesson planning and how the gradebook works and instructor systems and how to run D2L, and that's all going to be that Friday by some magic of what I'm going to try to do. And then we're going to provide intensive individual support throughout the semester. So we have a 5-to-1 ratio planned where we can observe everybody at least 2 people. So there will be 3 of us working in the first session and 1 the second session because most people are loaded in the front session. We're going to be in those classes in the first week, and we're going to be doing basically a survey every single day for the first week of the students, because after week 1 you're basically 20% through the class. So we need to get that teaching as good as possible, as quickly as possible. We're going to do very coordinated, so it's not going to be a sort of the autonomous that it used to be. It's going to be very specific lesson plans. This is how things are going to be run. You're going to do a short introduction with a break and then this group activity. Those teaching materials are already developed because it's what me and then Ryan McCombs, the calculus coordinator, we already have a set of teaching materials for 132. Sue Ellen already has a very developed set of teaching materials for 103. Dave Bramer has a very developed set of teaching materials for 124. So trying to cut out that lesson planning in terms of making teaching materials and shift that just to interpret the teaching materials and be able to enact them in the classroom in a active learning sort of way. And we'll have structured course meetings every single week to talk about those things, writing the quizzes together, all of that sort of thing.
I'm exhausted.
That's
I was gonna say you can breathe. We've got time.
Summer teaching 1.
So, a question I have about summer. It's compressed, but then the enrollments for the classes are typically smaller than they might be.
32.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the same as spring enrollment. It's smaller than fall enrollment. Fall is 37.
When you say you have course materials, are you in the book and then you're showing how to use the book, or?
This is an example.
Because you mentioned group work there,
Yep.
which is caught my.
It's not structured group work in the way you're thinking of group work. It is group work. It's peer instruction is probably the word that we want to use in here.
You
This
give
is
some pause. You're not just giving them information, they're going to do something.
Yeah. So peer. So like these are the types of activities. So let's do extreme value. So this is one of the activities that they will have for their extreme value unit on maxes and mins. It's an activity that it would be printed out, and they would go through this thing in class, and it would guide what they want to, and then you could have them work on this for a little bit. It's just a structured way, so that it's essentially it's just flipping the lecture, so that we don't just go through all of these questions. You have them, have the students just stop and work for a minute. So not really good group work in the sense that everybody's contributing in a different way. Really, you could do this individually, but
No, it's amazing.
students tend to work together on this kind of stuff. And then the same sort of thing exists for Dave's 124 notes. These are by section, and this actually is the curriculum where his notes have the full explanation in here. So this is all the intro stuff, all of the definitions, and then it has at the bottom of them example problems for students.
Can you scroll back up?
Yep.
So these are people who have been hired to do, so these course coordinators wrote these materials. Do they also teach?
Yeah, so Dave teaches 2 sections of Math 124 every semester, and he's a course coordinator, and he just wrote this because this is how he teaches his large lectures.
Now, is Dave a?
He is a math graduate student that took Math Ed 879 with me. He works very closely with me. He's actually...
Is he still a math PhD student?
He is still a math PhD student, but he is a full-time faculty coordinating Math 124.
So isn't there somebody else, faculty person I heard that was working on
Doing 124?
Tina?
Ben Schmidt and Tina Gerhardt are doing curriculum development for the lab component of 124. I'm not sure if this will run in the summer. What the labs are these things. So the labs are a collaborative, context-based problem-solving sort of experience. It really is just a context laid on top of the math topics, but it does do a good job. This is real data, and then they had them do stuff with like average rates of change with oil prices and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
This is what Ben and Tina developed.
And which I think is great. The thing I wonder from if students perceive it as like learning, I learn the math and then I get to see it how it's applied rather than learning the math through the applied, right?
That was my question. Could you start
Yeah.
with this and then sort of pull out the math?
Yeah, so I think this is iteration 1. This is year 1 of the lab thing. Dave and I have been talking a lot about, so 124 is structured as there's large lectures that have a lab recitation. Those are the ones he leads. He lectures Monday, Wednesday. They do these labs on Friday. And then there's small sections which are taught by GTAs, which are, I teach a small section right now, and it is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I just do I do his course notes Monday, Wednesday, and then I do this lab on Friday, so it's essentially just his lecture. But we were talking about turning those course sections into having the lab really be the driving force in those.
Become first, and then next week.
The whole week
build
could
off,
be,
yes.
these labs are rich enough that usually, like average
That's what I
rate of
can see right
change,
now
yeah.
you can pull out the math from this one.
Yeah.
There's a teacher issue though, because a lot of 124 would be the first assignment that you would get after you've done recitation. So it would be your first instructor of record teaching assignment as a grad student. So there's an issue there with...
Does it have to be the first? Could you use more experienced grad students here?
Not really, because the first teaching experience would be recitations, and then from recitations you do 124, and then from 124 you'll bounce into maybe 299 or a 132.
Because everything else is large lectures.
Everything else is recitation, large lectures.
I wouldn't necessarily mind if this was their first teaching.
It actually goes
Really?
quite well,
Yeah.
because we have enough coordination now, and Dave is really good. He worked with us on the QL project, actually. He took Math Ed 879 with me. He's got a good Math Ed background for being a math grad student. But we've done a pretty good job of getting TAs to enact this stuff pretty good, and...
Well, even if they don't, you have to start. And
Yeah.
no matter where.
Yeah, and the in-class instruction is good. When people use Dave's notes, some people just lecture through them, but a lot of people, it's hard not to say, oh, student example number 1, and just do it. A lot of people say,
And I wanted to go
do
back.
it.
That's why I want you to scroll up. I wanted to go back to something I noticed. So
Example 1 and example 2 and number 3.
It's more about the discourse, the dialogue that's happening around these examples. It reminds me, I recently did a handbook chapter where we looked at PME research in reasoning, argumentation, and proof. And it wasn't necessarily undergrad, but they were looking at the differences in how students took up examples where there was a dialogue in the process of, say, completing the proof instead of just showing the worked out proof. There was actually like the mathematician, you know, describing the thinking that went through each step, and even in some cases saying, okay, you know, like wait a minute, I totally got the wrong approach here. So you show like and so anyways, it was somebody in Germany who did this, and they had good effects. So this is an example to me of a way to start to work the reform from the inside, where, you know, all these classes are going to have these notes, but they don't have to look like just step-by-step examples.
They don't have to look like it.
Show thinking and dialogue about each step.
And this does match his teaching style. He says basically these things, but he doesn't read it. I skip over all of this dialogue, but that's because when I get to, you know, a problem, I can come up with a dialogue.
Yeah.
But that's just because I'm comfortable enough with the material. Most of the TAs will follow through his like story.
Yeah, but if this is their text, I think it's important that the text have some dialogue like this.
Every single one of his notes, the first 2 pages, are all setting up what we're trying to do. With the Riemann sum ones, the Riemann sum ones are really nice. They are, what would that have been? That would have been section 5, maybe?
To what extent are you making use of the
I don't know where they are.
symbolic manipulators and stuff? Or do they have to? How much is algorithmically drawn that you have to do all those steps that could be done?
They can use a calculator. They can use their full graphing calculator. So when we do integration by Riemann sums. Estimation, we do integration by calculator, and then we do integration by antiderivative method and compare across the methods.
Some algebra,
They use a TI-83 to do FN integral and just plug in the integral with the integrand to get a number out. And then the questions that they're asked are all about the interpretation of that.
Right.
So like, here's a marginal cost and a marginal revenue. What's the area in between these graphs represent? What is the area in between the graphs? What does that represent in the context of the problem?
Is on recognizing what integral you want.
Yep.
And what you're going to do with it, and how you get the answer.
There's a significant problem on the exam where it's just a statement, and the question is write the integral. Just don't integrate it, and that sort of thing.
Means to get the answer.
Right, and then another one would be like, you know, then it goes, and then the next question has to do the estimation, then the integrate by calculator or whatever, that sort of thing.
All right, so we're going to shut up so you can
finish. Yeah. No, it's all right. No, this is good. I would love to describe all this stuff.
It's amazing. I'd love another meeting just to come in.
Yeah, we've been busy. And then going into the fall, I'll just do this on here. Going into the fall of their second year then, so they will have taught for their first time, and this is where we're going to do we now do all of the teaching assignments Vetta and I do in the Center for Instructional Mentoring, so we can do really careful teaching assignments where they will get recitations if they haven't requested or like excelled to a point where we think that they need to go into their own classroom to get that teaching experience. That's been really good. We found that the most important thing that we've done so far is get the right people in the right rooms, so that's been great. We've had really we've done a good job of taking teaching requests and making sure pretty much everybody gets what they want, and it's a really diverse set of requests. You might have fifth-year PhD students who are saying, I'd really like a really rich teaching experience. I want to teach 299, versus their office mate who's also really into their teaching but says, I've taught most classes here. I'm really focusing on finishing my paper. Can I have recitations all on the same day, please? We've been able to accommodate those very diverse requests really effectively because everybody sort of falls somewhere on the continuum.
What's Math 843?
Math 843, okay, so first year MSIM students, that's the Masters in Industrial Mathematics. Math 843 is their first class. It's an extremely demanding course, so like we're making sure that MSIM students get like a Calc 2 recitation, so they have very little prep work for their teaching.
How humane.
What?
Very humane.
Yeah, I know, right? Because we've had some great industrial math students this semester. We had 2 great industrial math students who taught Math 124 as instructors of record in the fall. They each had 2 of their own sections, and they did a great job, but that was really overwhelming for them to deal with.
That's not right for students.
Right. Well, I mean, it was probably right for the undergrad students. It wasn't as good for the grad students because then they were being pulled between their grad work and their teaching, and unfortunately, teaching is just so appealing for most people to do a good job at. So it gets priority a lot of times when the grad program might not want that to be the case early in the grad career. Mm-hmm. And then the big thing that we do, this is just a little bullet here, is the mentoring program. So the way the mentoring program works is it's organized by course. And we have these pod meetings, mentoring pods. So Math 132 has a mentoring pod meeting where they talk about Math 132 specific issues with a lead TA that is teaching Math 132. So the lead TAs are dispersed. We get the lead TAs first and then disperse them across the teaching. So there's a lead TA for each class that will lead these pod meetings. Zveta and I ran those this year, but I think we're going to step out of that because it makes us drive the conversation completely. It becomes a presentation rather than a conversation. And the mentoring leaders are incredible. We have an incredible talent pool with those people to be able to run those. We also do mentoring observations with written feedback. All of the mentoring leaders do this. Everybody in the mentoring program gets observed at the beginning of the semester and then at the end of the semester, and they get written feedback. I am super proud of one of my lead TAs who gives 4 pages single-spaced written feedback after each one of her presentations. For the observations, we developed a little observation protocol where we have I wrote this where I have the people who are observing look at different aspects of the class, physical, was the room lit well, that sort of thing. What were students doing? What were the different types of questions that the TA was asking? Were they always asking the same type of question? That sort of, just a sort of guide to get different dimensions of the teaching. That has been excellent. Our lead TAs are really, really good at that. And then each of the instructors has individual meetings required with a mentoring leader, completely informal. They just have to show up at their office. They can say hi and bye, but that's always been, I didn't want to bring this up in the pod meeting, but I have this student who's causing me grief, and that's been really important, especially, unfortunately, for international female students. I have a huge problem with white male undergrads from Brighton and Grand Blanc and everywhere else in Michigan, where they're not ready to deal with diversity at MSU. So those individual meetings are really good for that support network for those types of GTAs who are having those kinds of issues. And then we're re-implementing course meetings. Course meetings have been discontinued over the last couple of years, and that's because they were really useless. They were course meetings that were admin dissemination. And so we'd come and we'd have some people who couldn't show up, so we'd have like 60% of the people there. The course coordinators would tell them a bunch of stuff, and then they'd send out an email, and people would have questions through the presentation and through the email that were clearly answered about when do you have to have your web grade or grade submitted. So we've cut all that out, and now we're going to re-implement course meetings explicitly on teaching, where there's specific teaching-related activities that we're developing. Really simple stuff, think about a problem that you had this week and share it with the group, and then let's talk about that. But like teaching course meetings, not admin. So that's a mentoring program. Yeah. Inside of this is separately, this is in our teaching evaluation and feedback. So I said that we did the online SIRS, and what Zveta and I and the rest of the first floor instructional team, so Rachel Lund, if you've heard about her, Jane Zimmerman, we all do the teaching evaluation observations. We are working with Melissa McDaniels at the grad school to develop a better teaching evaluation protocol. I would love to collaborate with Math Ed on that, like in class, quick. We're thinking half an hour because we got to get, this semester we had 58 to do. So we're trying to have students do some of that, undergrad students, by trying to prioritize what our problems are. So by doing this first week formative assessment, how's your teaching going? Oh, it's terrible. My TA's been late every day. Then we can prioritize those. But we need to think of a better way to do that. It used to be done where it was just people that you got observed early in your career, and if it was okay, you sort of never got observed again, and that's not really what we wanted to set up, so we're trying to move away from that. We currently have very little manpower or structure to do any sort of observations with ULAs. That's currently under the scope of each individual ULA course supervisor. So Math 132 or Math 103, College Algebra, Sue Allen coordinates the observation and evaluation of those ULAs. We're going to absorb that. We just don't know how to do that yet. One way that we're thinking about doing, I'll talk about how we're going to do that later. Let's finish what we do mentoring, and then I'll talk about my works in progress.
Mentoring are graduate students, experienced graduate students who then take the role of mentoring younger
graduate students, yep. And then we coordinate that thing, and that's where that has been really effective. Our lead TAs are incredibly talented.
How different are the ULA responsibilities from the GTA responsibilities?
It's usually different courses.
As in, could they be part of the, you said there's not a lot of structure or manpower to build a ULA stuff.
They could be a part of it, and they are when they're recitation. So some ULAs are recitation leaders for a calc class, and then in that case they are in the mentoring pod. Our main problem is for courses like College Algebra, which is Math 103, or Math 114, which is Trig, is that there aren't GTA populations there. So we don't have any GTA lead TAs that have those teaching positions. We'd have to have a person doing those dedicated, and we just didn't have the people to do that. 100E, all of those. If you don't have, the nice thing about the mentoring program with the grad ones is they're all grad teaching assignments. So we essentially just have, you're a lead TA, you're going to have, we change their assistantship structure around, so it's really like almost no more money to have them be a lead TA, give them the leadership role, they get the CV experience, they really like being a lead TA, and it's great, but it's very little actual financial cost to structure that in there.
I know in 100E, because I just had this meeting with Vince and Keith and Pavel, that likely there will, so math and prime are paying for basically what we've been doing in our 100E class. They're going to be paying for that second TA for that class that has been paid for by my grant, but one of the stipulations was that person who fills that role, which will be likely a prime student, would serve as a lead TA, basically,
yes,
for the ULA. So hopefully they told you about that. I hope this isn't the first time that
No, yeah, that's on my works in progress. We'll get to that because there are some more ways that we've been playing with that a little bit. So after you go through the mentoring program, the last thing that we do is this is all the continuing support throughout your time there. We have structured advanced teaching assignments now. So like we built this 299 thing where they can be teaching 299. That used to be faculty only. Now it's grad students only.
What's 299?
299 is a transition to proof class. Ronnie's teaching that in the fall, so we've been able to get prime students into that too.
Now, one of my interns told me that she worked with that class.
Yep.
She wouldn't have taught it.
It currently has been, so high-level undergrads had been the recitation leaders for that.
Okay.
And this
But
is
now-
299 for the math majors?
Math
Not the
majors.
elementary majors?
Yes, they will take that too, I think, because they take, I'm not sure, I think they take that before they take 301, 304.
So both the elementary minors?
I'm not entirely sure. I think most people take 299 though, that are
I know
math
they take
major
some-
minor.
I think they take a proof course, but I didn't know it was the same
Yeah.
one.
Bryn leads 301, which is, I don't know what, I think that is proof related maybe. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure of the structure of the elementary
Okay, I
ed,
thought that was-
stuff.
okay.
I know the math major stuff a little bit more. But now like what grad students will do is they'll be a recitation leader and then they'll be an instructor the next semester, and the instructors and the recitation leaders are paired together, so it's like this track through that thing, and that has gone incredibly well. All of the grad students who went through that pilot of that tore up that class. They taught it better than most of the faculty doing that, other than Russell, who developed the flip model. 101, 102, that's a advanced teaching assignment, although this semester there were some issues there. 201, 202, of course, is advanced teaching assignment. Right now, Sarah Klonderman and Rushma are working with Jane Zimmerman doing the math 201. That's all coordinated through some now, so we got to do some more collaboration there. We help with any teaching assignments, CVs, personal websites, all that stuff. So we help with like the future faculty presentation, getting people converted from grad student self to putting together really great apps. I spend a lot of time revising cover letters and teaching recommendations. We write all the letters of recommendation for teaching, come through Sims. Veta and I do that. We help people put together applications for FAST Fellows. We're doing the certification in college teaching thing. We have facilitated mock interviews for different jobs. Like Sveta's been on a search committee for a teaching-related job, so she's our mock interviewer for teaching-related jobs. Keith has said that he's willing to interview people as if they were applying at MSU, so that's sort of opened up for people, which is really important. And teaching assignment stuff, okay. Coordinate the MOC, yeah, okay. So some works in progress as we wrap up here related to the teaching assignment thing. So we have 3 prime students teaching summer math classes. They're teaching, we have 2 Math 124s and 1 Math 103. And the summer teaching load is 1 class plus 5 MLC hours. And what we're doing, we're working with Jane to figure out what our minimum number of MLC staffing is. We're hoping to decrease the MLC staffing through the workshop structure, where you can have 2 people run a room of 35 instead of 1 person work with a table of 4 students. When you have that sort of planned, we're doing trig substitutions a day, we have this activity, so that will help decrease our MLC demand. And in return, we'll be able to pull MLC shifts away. So if your teaching load is 1 class plus 4 MLC shifts, maybe you get decreased to 2 MLC shifts or 1 MLC shift. For the special assistantship, that is a teaching research assistantship, well, you'll work with SIM to do something higher level, which could be really great for prime students. So like maybe they're going to work with ULAs then, and then we have hours that they're already paid for, again, not increasing our financial burden. We're just restructuring the MLC a little bit so we can have them do some research. So like one example of a project that somebody would be able to work on with that is we just interviewed a bunch of MLC students that Ryan identified that went to the MLC for about the same amount of time, had the same grade predictors, ACT score and stuff, but had different grades, and we were trying to figure out what the how or if the MLC contributed through interviews. So that could be a research project that somebody that had one of these teaching research assistantships could jump on and help us do that sort of thing. So we're definitely looking to turn an eye towards teaching research coming out of SIM.
Yeah, related to that, you remind me of Uri Treisman's early work with calculus. And another would be, is there a subgroup of students that come to the learning lab and work together, and what effect does that have? Similar to someone who just comes in periodically.
Yeah, my this is totally motivated by my research interests. For my depth paper, I just proposed to write a framework for categorizing students out of class experience, and like this is where we're going with that. That's where I see this line of thought going. So students are only in class for 150 minutes a week. What do they do outside of class? And trying to understand that a little more through all of the structures that we offer is really the key to optimizing it. Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly.
That's going on right now.
How do the neighborhood MLCs interact with the regular MLC when people go to workshop sessions? The workshop sessions, when we talked about standards-based grading, so you take your exam and know you got a 1 on quadratic functions. What do you do with that? Well, maybe you go to an MLC workshop about quadratic functions. You get a ticket to take a gateway and go earn back that mastery once you've went through a MLC workshop intervention, and then you can go take an automated gateway exam that's very much just, web worky, but you've went through this experience in order to get to that point. So like these things I think are all down the road. I think we're heading in a good direction. We got a really great team.
What about, I don't know if you're at the end.
I have more minutes. I would love to talk about this.
Well, what are the post?
Oh, no. I'm not at the end. I have 20 minutes. I was thinking the Math 102 final starts at 12:45, but that's already being proctored by other people. I was thinking I have 5 more minutes. No, I'm not late. I'm not late for it. It's already been handled.
So you got some more?
I have lots of time. No, this is all I have on this silly presentation.
So what about the postdocs?
Postdocs. So
you don't go into that. You also
we do. Yep. Sveta works with the postdocs mostly because they mostly teach upper division courses.
Who works with them?
Sveta, she's my co-coordinator. Sveta Sendova, she is great. She just won the Frame Award through the math department. But her and I have like this de facto split where I basically do 200 and below, and she basically does 200 and above. She has a math PhD from Texas A&M. I don't know where her teaching expertise comes from, but she is right there. She's got a lot of...
Is she in a faculty position? Or
she is fixed-term faculty. She is currently the director of the MLC. That happened this year, and her and I are the co-directors of the Center for Instructional Mentoring. Her and Rachel Lund are going to the Co-Minds workshop this summer. That's put on by Natasha Spear. That's a professional development.
In Maine?
Is it in Maine? Oh, if it's in Maine.
Well, that's where she is.
That's where she is. I don't know where Co-Minds is, but like her and Rachel are going there. So she is very much doing everything she can to learn as much as she can about teaching and stuff. And her and I working together has really been a really productive collaboration. She really helps. What she brings to the table is she is very much in the mix with the undergrad program stuff. So she knows like the track of 299 through the algebras, and she deals with all the advanced track stuff, so she knows all the drop down stuff. So when she's working with a postdoc who's teaching 310 abstract algebra, she's very well equipped to be like, these are the expectations of the course, these are different ways, and she's good with group work and all of that stuff. So she can handle the content and the little bit less of a teaching demand on those classes because the math majors are a little bit more compatible with more lecture style stuff.
So she's fixed term, so she's a specialist, I assume? Was that an advertised position?
Well, no, we're just fixed term. We're just...
Right,
whatever. I think we're technically visiting instructors is what we're hired as.
So where did she come from? I mean, is she a spouse?
She is a spouse of Mark Ewan, who's tenure track. I imagine that she'll get a continuing specialist offer sometime in the near future because she's the MLC director now. She runs her and I coordinate all of the neighborhood center stuff.
She came in interested in the education side, not the
Yep, she taught at women's teaching college for 2 or 3 years before Mark moved up here and she moved with him. Yeah, her and Rachel Lund is another name you're going to hear about. She was a spousal hire as well. She's also fixed term this year. She was only an instructor, but she's going to be in sim in a big way.
Rachel Lund, and who's this?
Rachel Lund got her master's from Western in math ed.
Okay.
New Bryn from Western. She taught at Washington State when her husband was getting his PhD there. She taught there for 3 or 4 years. And out there, she worked with like CrowdMark and lots of other cool teaching innovation sorts of things. So she brings a lot of of that teaching experience knowledge, but she is great with providing feedback to teaching assistants and
Is
stuff.
her husband still the same name? No.
I think so. Her husband is in the cyclotron. He's trying to blow up our planet with this guy over here.
Who's the other one? What's the other name?
Sveta Sendova, TSV. Svetanka, I think is her name. I don't.
Okay.
So, Andy, as you were talking, I was trying to think about, you know how they talk about classroom instruction from more of a teacher-directed or teacher-driven versus student-centered. I was trying to think about how I would classify your approach to instructional mentoring, whether it's driven from, like, what angle drives it? Is it bottom up in terms of recognizing here's what students are articulating are the things that they're needing, they're not getting, so then that's going to drive what we do and the kinds of things that we provide for faculty? Or is it the other way around? Is it thinking about, you know, what TAs are saying, our needs of theirs, and trying to provide?
So both. I would say our overall philosophy is student-centered, but not our students. It's the general, like a lot of my perspective that I draw is from like the calculus study where they've already went and I would say most simply, my current mission is lecture's not working. Let's do anything else to start. So that's where we're at right now. And then we do have some teacher-driven stuff. So like with this course feedback for Math 124, when they implemented the labs, they wrote those over the summer and they were finishing them up as we started in the fall. And they were really great, but there was a lot of problems. And we were, through SIM, we were able to facilitate meetings with Ben and Tina and Dave, where we had our lead TAs come in who had been observing all of the classes, and we had just an open discussion about what the problems were, what needed to change, and what came out of that is now all of the labs have teaching guides attached to them, they have learning goals attached to them, and there's a little bit there, and there's a meeting each week where you can come to the meeting and get professional development on the specific context if you're not familiar with the stock market or whatever. So like that came out of the TA sort of needs.
Right. I just was, as you were talking, I was thinking, it feels sometimes a little bit like, in a way, you're trying to be everywhere at once.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was wondering about, you know, to the extent to which you want to focus some effort around teacher-directed PD, and that you're giving them tools to learn from their practice, but not necessarily like you could just give them all the materials and give them PD constantly, right? But you can't be everywhere. So it's
that's
like,
where I think this
yeah.
SIM seminar stuff is where these are not specifically like this is what you need to do to have effective office hours. It's like we would talk through, like, you know, some people have had mock office hours during the first day of class where they teach students how to come to office hours, or like, you know, it is a getting students to come to office hours is a problem. How do you guys, what sorts of things do you want to do to get your students to come to office hours? So this isn't as much like this is what you need to do, whereas we're trying to build up like you're going to need to make teaching decisions, even if you have the lesson plans. How can you go about making those teaching decisions? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, right. You want them to kind of shift how they see their teaching, so they recognize the problems that you want them to recognize, and then they think about, well, what are some possible solutions? Because that's the thing I also felt like with each of these classes, the context is different. I mean, the students that you're working with in, say, 299 are very different than the students that you're working in 100E.
Yeah.
And that's going to necessitate maybe different solutions to the same problem.
Right.
But I was, when you said something, I thought you were going to go a different direction, is I think I'm going to come from the curriculum perspective, and I'm looking at the coherence.
Yes, this
So
is
what
the
I
perspective
thought
we
you were
need.
going was, they come in with holes. They've all had 103, they've all had 116. 116 is a god-awful course. I don't know 103 right now. It's just one little thing after another. So is there any coherence? So you're trying to kind of fill in, I think, in one level, there are gaps. But the other thing that concerns me is that the students...
When you say they, do you mean students or instructors?
The students.
Yes, okay.
Well, you're doing, the instructors
Yeah.
are just... But the students come in, and they don't have any sense that there's one or two big ideas in the course. And I'm concerned about the coherence, and you can do it really well with 124.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can do it with 103. I mean, the courses you have responsibility for.
But is
So
curriculum
what
development
are
a
the,
branch?
what are the
It
handful?
is tangentially something. Of course, why would we not be doing that? No, so we pretty much are, anything that is dealing with the 100 and 200 level classes comes through SIM. So like with Math 102, now this is weird because I'm involved through my because I was part of that team, but like we are closely involved with that curriculum development because we're trying to figure out how GTAs would be positioned in that course to do curriculum development, let's say, and so
They can't do curriculum development.
Yeah.
They can't do curriculum development.
not curriculum development, but they could do, so some of our GTAs, we're talking about some of our prime students who have done curriculum development that are going to be in that 101, 102 teaching position. And so like curriculum development that I'm talking about is, okay, we want to do an activity that has to talk about government spending. And these are our learning goals. Like what is the activity that you're going to have them
I
go
think
through?
more, okay, what are they going to, what is it, I just think that you can approach it a couple different ways. You know, what are the 2 or 3 big mathematical ideas you're going to know at the end of this?
Mhm.
Or you could say, what are the 2 or 3 kinds of problems you're going to be able to solve at the end of this? And that's quite different than just
Yeah.
dividing an activity
Yeah.
to solve equations or to do trig substitution or something. That's
That is a
different.
bigger,
That's different.
yeah, that's a bigger problem.
I'm just doing all these isolated things.
Yeah.
But what's driving it?
Yep.
And that's what's missing with our students. They don't have any sense that there's of knowing something.
Yeah, I think that I'm really, really high on standards-based grading right now, because when I'm looking at this problem that we're facing, there's no clear way to go from our current, let's say, Math 132 structure. It's because it's very optimized. It runs very cleanly. It's nice and standard. You get this expected sort of student grades on exams that you would expect. Like it's this nice, it looks nice on paper. So now how to go from that, how to tear that down and rebuild something that's based on learning objectives.
So you may not want to start with 132 because that's got a lot of faculty involved.
Right. But all of the classes face the same challenge, because like Math 103 is very nicely, it's cheap because it's large lecture, small class recitation run by ULAs.
Pink quizzes on Monday. And
there's lecture videos developed for every single lesson plan that have notes that are blank notes with filled in notes already developed. So I agree that
You take the course and not have to think. Sorry.
yeah, no, well, I agree that the curriculum is not anywhere where it needs to be, but like,
So where can you, so you can't solve all the problems,
right.
but is there a course that you have some, like it sounds like the 124.
120. So I don't have any responsibility over any course. My influence is all based on the relationships I'm able to
Yes.
build with the individual coordinators of
Yeah.
specific
Which is
courses.
huge.
Ryan McCombs is a calc coordinator. Him and I have an excellent working relationship. I help him write the exam. Dave Bramer and I, he's a 124 coordinator. Him and I have a great relationship. I've built a really good relationship with Bronlyn for the 101, 102. Sue Allen and I, she's the Math 103 coordinator. We talk about gardening all the time too. So I have these relationships built up. Now I just have to figure out like which project am I going to work on first. So my current focus is I'm going to work with Jane on the Dow Scholars program on the Math 103 for Dow Scholars, because we're going to do standards-based grading in that. It's only 100 students, so we have a nice small pilot, and we can talk about how I think the standards-based grading just allows us to focus on learning objectives. She's trained as an educator. She taught in Gaylord for like 20 years or whatever. Probably not 20 years. She's not that old.
Who are the all scholars?
The Dow Scholars, that's a grant from the Dow Corporation to improve access and opportunity for people from underrepresented schools. Essentially, you probably know what that is. Is that a good?
Yeah, so they do target students of color who are interested in, and they are STEM intended.
STEM.
Yeah.
So it used to be the Drew program, kind of?
Well, I think the Drew program
It
still
lives separately. The
exists.
Drew program still
Yeah.
does exist.
But that was intended for the STEM majors.
But
Yep.
Drew, I think they go into Lyman Briggs, or I think it is housed in Lyman Briggs or something.
I thought it was
There's some-
engineering.
It's gotten moved.
Maybe not, I don't know.
I know Sharon Griffin coordinates Drew, and the way that Drew works is there's one section of each class through Math 132 that's Drew centered. So like this year's Math 132 for Drew, was taught by one of our good lead TAs, and it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday regular times, like 50 minutes, but then you have a Tuesday, Thursday 2-hour workshop. And that TA works all 5 days and teaches all of those sections. So that's the Drew intervention, is that you get specific teachers and then you have this workshop community feel. You go up with your cohort through every class, and like a lot of people who took 114 and 116 together then move into 132 together, that sort of thing.
They do well. I mean, it's just no surprise, though.
Yeah, they just have focus.
And they have more hours, right?
Yeah. The Dow, the track for that will be 103, 124.
And this is just starting?
Yep. It's in its second year. And that won't be 132. That'll be 103, 124 as a track. So we're building this 102, and the 102 is going to be a full year stretched, not 102, 103, a full year stretched 103 if so they'll take 103 over the full year, pass that thing, not ever take 1825 so you'll do a summer bridge program, get put into a year-long 103, and then you'll get tracked right into a special section of 124, which Dave and I hope will be an IBL section of 124, based on the labs, built into no sort of lecture content, just all activities the whole time. And then hopefully we can draw on that Dow program and scale that up to the rest of 103 and 124. But the Dow offers a nice opportunity because it's got funding. The people working on it are some of the best instructors that have a limited role teaching-wise because they're working on Dow, and it's a small number of students, so anything we do with pilot work.
So you can try things.
Yep, anything we do with pilot work works right in Dow, and the people get to benefit. I would say like the people who need that innovation the most get to benefit immediately from it. Because it's in Dow.
1825s could benefit from that.
Yeah, but I mean, this particular track, I think, is a good track to focus on, the good demographic of students, and they get to benefit. And
as you were doing, of course, you reminded me, because I did this for 25 years, 100 years ago, when you're working with the graduate students, one of the things, a challenge for me was to help the Oriental students move into this inquiry-based, because I don't know if it's still true in China, but you come out that a sign of respect is you don't ask questions, you sit passively. And so it was a challenge for me to, open that up for them to that it was in this culture.
Yeah,
and also the payoff was that there's more learning going on. It's not just because we're being nice.
Yeah, I think we've had some pretty good success with that and also some pretty terrible success with that.
It's hard.
The best way to do it is to get those experiences early. So this observation thing has been really important. We put that, for the observations, we have an observation list. You need to go watch these TAs and see, and we phrase it, and it's been really effective to not phrase it as this is how you need to teach versus this is how we teach at MSU. Like this is just how it's done, that cultural.
And it's not always just Orientals. I mean, there was the same thing happened with white.
Yeah, domestic students for sure. But we've done a pretty good job because it's just always been that like when they observe a Math 103 lecture and like, man, the student seemed checked out. That was just a straight lecture. We're like, yeah, why was it ineffective? Like, just always painting the picture that like you have a responsibility and you have to get students talking in class. That's the
math just can't go from your mouth to their paper. It has to go through.
And we do a lot of reflective work, like what was your best math class, what was your worst math class, and people always they know if they just think about it, they know.
How many people this is an incredible switch. How many people are now in the math department that are playing a role similar? You've named a lot of people.
So we have, I would say, team first floor is Alec Drockman, coordinates the neighborhood MLCs. Rachel Lund is working on 133. Dave Bramer's working on 124. Ryan McCombs coordinates the calculus. Zveta and I coordinate SIM. And then Valentina is going to step into the Dow Scholars, Drew Dower Skiff. So probably like eight-ish that are very much aligned. Jane does the MLC, maybe 9, are very much on the same page.
What's Drockman's first name?
Alec.
He was a high school teacher, wasn't he?
He did. Alexander Drockman. Yeah.
I got him in fresh as a methods course.
He was at Waverly for a long time, for like 20 years.
Mm-hmm. My God, I'm getting old.
So I noticed there was that one piece where you have them in their second semester spring. You have them with a mentor, and they're observing, and then they teach 2 to 3 lessons. And it made me think, in a way, this is kind of similar to the field placement or the internship, right? But I'm wondering, how could you have that be a lot more structured in terms of they do say, they start out by co-planning and doing some co-teaching, and then they work their way into teaching on their own full.
Yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer. So a couple of challenges with that. First of all, we want to, Zetz and I have gotten a lot more wise. Small changes at first. So that's why we're just going to try to get the structure figured out with a mentor, and then we'll accelerate to that quickly. Another challenge is that is assuming that the people that they're paired with do structured lesson planning and that sort of thing, which is a significant assumption, I would say.
Right, but it would need to be expectation given to the mentor teachers, like this is, we expect you
We
to-
don't know how the role with the mentors is going to work, especially if the mentors are going to be tenured faculty. I think we'll be able to I think the mentors will be able to be the first floor team and our lead TAs, and I think we'll be able to have enough people that we can have very much our set of people that are going to be the mentors, and we'll have a lot more control over that. We just got to see how that structure is
So
going
mentor,
to.
it could be faculty people?
We don't know. We are designing that section. We haven't done it yet. We haven't done anything like
So
that
the
yet.
faculty
So
would
we could
mentor.
totally, I would love to collaborate. That's next spring, so we have some time before we have to figure that out. I would love to figure out a way to draw on TE, because Keith is on board with this too, but I think the push is to turn this into a college TE program. You know, like, it doesn't really exist anywhere. It will separate our graduate students from other people, and we can do it in a way such that we do not detract from the graduate work by just restructuring things in a way that makes sense. We don't need to have people answering web work questions for 5 hours a week in the MOC.
Yeah.
We can do things better, and I think that's everybody's sort of
So
button.
coordinating with Prime to use some of that.
Yes, you building these teaching assignments better.
Who's teaching the summer from Prime? Is that?
Yeah, it's on the it's Kevin, Michael, and Kenneth.
Kevin, Michael. And
Kevin Lawrence, Michael Morissette, and Kenneth Bradfield.
Kenneth Bradfield is a site student.
He is a
Right,
site student.
right.
Great, thank you, Andy, for sharing.
Yes,
all
yes.
this.
I'll send you my other one that has some other info on it.
Andy.
But I didn't sleep a lot this semester because I taught 4 classes this semester on top of what I was doing.
Andy, that's impossible.
It was.
Nice suggestion.
But we almost won our softball championship, so.
I'm sorry, I don't know who you are.
I'm Bill Martinez. I work in physics astronomy. I do phys ed work now, but I've known